I've just pulled over on my way to the coast and stopped at a place called Langham, because as I was driving down this road, I noticed in the distance there was a strange kind of dome shape building in the distance. So as I've pulled over and a closer inspection, it seems to be some kind of museum or aircraft facility, maybe from kind of World War II. And then there's even a big plane replica, or even it could be a real one, but probably a replica, just off shot, which I'll show in a minute. I'm not too familiar as to what aircraft it is, so I don't really want to speculate and say what it is, but maybe there's a sign around here that I can kind of try and find to get a bit more information. But anyway, I thought, yeah, I'd pull over and take a few images around here, because it's actually really interesting. So what I'll do is I think I'll get the camera out. I've got some film left over from another shoot, but I have no idea what's in it, because I, for some reason, didn't leave the kind of the note in the back on the film back. So what I'm going to do is just maybe rate it at 100, and even if it's 400, hopefully it should be fine. So I'll have a few shots and then walk around here before heading back onto the road.
Don't you agree? With beating hearts, we're still alive.
So I've finally arrived at where I'd initially set off to, and it's a place called Stoo-key. And yes, it is actually pronounced that way, even if it is spelled as Stiffkey. But the reason why it's called that is because that's what the locals used to call it, after the little blue crabs that kind of hide in the marshy, muddy areas around here. But the main reason why I've actually come here is maybe for a possible potential little project that I'm kind of considering doing. So I thought I'd kind of come down here, kind of scout, just to see if there's actually anything worth kind of noting to maybe kickstart the project. So the area is extremely kind of flat and large and expanse, marshy, Saltmarsh area, and it's actually in between Wells and Blakeney. So there's a couple of directions that I could have picked from where the car park is. It's either Wells, which is I think an hour's walk that way, or behind me, which is where I've decided to kind of go, just because there seems to be a bit more interesting kind of things about and a bit closer. And it's an extremely warm day today, considering it's only April. So let's head back onto the pathway and see what we can find. So I haven't had to venture too far from the car and something's already caught my eye. Some kind of disused pipeline of some sort. No idea what it was for, but it's definitely not been used for a long, long time from the state that it's currently in. So take a picture here and there and see if there's anything interesting that comes from it.
I'll let you go, just need some time. one place you need to find your way. I know now you'll never change your mind for something that matters to me.
So I thought it would be a good opportunity to just have a bit of a rest and refreshment, especially with the heat and the heavy bag. But also a good opportunity to reload the camera with some new film. The annoying thing is that I've only got one roll of 100 ISO and the others are 400 ISO. Obviously, I guess I'll still use them if I end up going through the whole roll of the 100 colour ISO. It just means, I guess, that I'm going to have to stop down the lens quite a bit because the Hasselblad's shutter speed's only got up to 1/500th of a second on the 80mm, and I think it's 1/400th on the 150 that I've got with me. And I don't have any... you do have some filters, so hopefully if I do need to bring that. I forgot that I completely did bring some filters, so ignore my reservations of having 400 ISO, should be fine. I could just whip out the filters.
It's been 72 weeks in this town. Wait and see, but the chances are small, just like the lottery.
The one thing that you will notice around in this area are these brightly coloured yellow bushes known as firs, which have a kind of a coconutty scent to them when they're used in perfumes. Being inspired by William Sheepskin and his kind of flora and fauna photographs, usually I'd wander past, but I thought after seeing his images, maybe I would stop and try and create something interesting. I could hear the buzzing of bees around in this area, but I don't think I'm going to be as lucky as he has in his images. So I've just been following the path that I set off on this morning, and I've just noticed that there's some boats in the distance which look kind of interesting. They look maybe disused just from kind of the quality of them. So what I'm going to do is maybe try and get as close as I possibly can. But there are some kind of large kind of dips and divots around in the kind of the marshy area, and they're very muddy, so I don't want to kind of get stuck in them. But hopefully with the 150mm lens that I've kind of got, hopefully I can kind of get close enough that maybe I can do something, you know, with compositionally wise. So let's head on over there and hopefully I won't trip over myself. So I haven't actually been able to get as close as I would like to have done. Kind of the muddied stream is kind of preventing me from getting any closer. Even with the 150mm lens, it's not really kind of, I guess, accentuating the boats as I would like to. They're still pretty small. But what I have done is kind of use this muddy stream to maybe kind of give a foreground kind of interesting elements to hopefully lead the eye up through the frame towards the boat, even if they are a bit small. But hopefully it comes out as how I'm kind of envisioning it in my head. So crossing my fingers that the image kind of comes back as I'm intending to. So what I've gone and done is switch the film back with Ilford HP5, and as mentioned before, I actually have my filter set with me. So what I've kind of done is added a red filter and a polarizer. So I think the red filter is about kind of 2 point something stops. I don't think it's quite 2.5 stops of reduction of kind of light. So I just generally do it at like 2 stops. And what I've done there is added a circular polarizer on the front, which is then an additional 1 stop of light to compensate for. But I'm hoping that again, it's going to kind of hopefully darken the light at the moment. I don't know how much the circular polarizer is going to adjust based on, I guess, kind of the position of the sun, but I'll kind of have a look through. Generally, you can kind of notice it in the viewfinder, whether it's actually doing any kind of darkening or obviously it's going to reduce the reflections regardless of the direction of the sunlight, but the main reason is for trying to darken the sky, so hopefully it will do it. But again, I'll just have to hope and see when the film has been developed or not. Okay, because I can't really tell too much through the waist level viewfinder, what I'm going to do is actually switch this out and put in my actual prism finder, so do that really quickly. It's a bit of a shame that the water isn't higher, because I am a bit of a sucker when it comes to kind of wooden walkways in water and long exposures at least. It's still pretty down here, so even though it's not ideal, I'm still going to take a picture. So one of the reasons why I've come down here is because of its military presence in World War II. So back at the car park, there's a map, and on the map there's something called the Whirligig, which was apparently used for when American troops kind of came across to train with the British troops, with kind of shooting down model airplanes. So what they would do is go to the Whirligig and kind of use that to kind of, I guess, set off their miniature realistic airplanes, and then along the beach, kind of down here in the marsh area, the British troops would then practice kind of shooting them down. So that's kind of the reason why I'm down here, was just to see, I guess, kind of remnants of what's been left behind really, and to see if there is actually any kind of evidence down here. We walked past something called a pillbox earlier, but I think maybe there's some other kind of hidden gems lying around in the fields, which I kind of sort of came across while doing a bit of research. And the campsite back at the car park actually has older buildings which were used again for the troops during that kind of time period. So even though I didn't find too much down here, I think there's definitely kind of maybe potential. Just going to require me to do a bit more research in terms of kind of like locations and where they are around in this area. I think today it's been fairly successful, if not a bit hot, but I actually haven't got any food and I've run out of water, so what I'm going to do is head back to the car. There's a little cafe just on the outskirts of the village which I saw, so I think I'm going to head back there. After a quick bite to eat, I actually headed back to the car park, but this time I wanted in the opposite direction from earlier. The reason being is that I wanted to try and do something with the mud pools that I kept seeing scattered about the marshes throughout the day. After a short walk along the pathway, a small collection of mud pits caught my eye, so I actually headed a bit closer just to see if I could see anything that looked interesting or not. I probably actually walked around this area for maybe about 30 minutes, just taking a few snaps here and there. I wasn't overly excited by any of the images I made of the mud pits, but I kind of feel like there's something here potentially. Maybe if I revisit the scene at another time, I'll approach the scene differently. Nature's met me with your grace.
1,000 miles of singing songs. Tall grass branches, swans and palms.
Afterwards, I decided to walk towards the coastline, which requires you to cross some of the marshland. On this particular day, the mud was extremely sticky, and to avoid it as much as possible, I ended up having to jump over a lot of the pits. Some of these gaps are so large that bridges have been installed, thankfully. One bridge, though, did have a sign warning of structural issues, so I decided not to risk crossing it. Due to the strong winds and not knowing when high tide was, I didn't venture too far out before turning back.
What glorious days. Nature's meted me with your grace.
Well, my time here has come to an end at Stiffkey. I hope you've enjoyed the wander around as much as I have, and hopefully I've got a few images that I can actually maybe use or showcase and just show off in general. Well, anyway, now it's time to head on home. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you soon.